We currently have a climate emergency and a biodiversity crisis, but these things have not appeared suddenly. They've been accumulating over decades. The conditions of the present are determined by the conditions of the past. So you cannot ignore what's happened in the past if you want to understand the present. The idea that we might be stumbling into the future with any record of where we've been or where we might go in the future is just horrific. Fortunately, long-term experiments have this unique ability to enable us to look back and to look forwards at a time when we, more ever than before, really need to know where we're heading. Hello, John.
Jonathan, good to see you.
Likewise.
And welcome to the Parkgrass experiment.
Thank you.
This is the world's longest running ecological experiment and the oldest experiment on the Ecological Continuity Trust's National Register. So it was started in 1856 and this will be its 168th year. There's real value in being able to link samples that we could take from these plots now to the sample archive where we have samples going back to the 1800s to see how the plots have changed over time. Well, welcome to the Rothamsted Sample Archive, Jonathan.
This is amazing.
Our generation of scientists is incredibly lucky that John Laws, who started the original experiments, decided to keep samples of soil and samples of the crops from all of the different plots. It now contains upwards of 300,000 individual samples.
Incredible.
And somewhere there will be the sample from the Parkgrass hay meadow from the year of your birth. So let's try and find that.
Wow, that would be great.
I think it's down this aisle here. And we're looking
we're
for...
getting to my vintage.
Yes, looking for 1954, I think, aren't we?
That's right,
So
yes.
1953, 1954, here we are. So this is 1954, first crop, and plot 12. So if you like, I think of those plots as like biological barometers. You can look back at all of these samples and see how they've responded to environmental change.
And this is unique, isn't it? There's nowhere else
Absolutely
like this.
unique.
Yeah, yeah. I better put this back, don't
Yes.
you think? So the Ecological Continuity Trust is unique in its focus on long-term experiments and conserving and continuing the inheritance of the past, and then starting new long-term experiments in order to provide a scientific heritage for the future. There are over 80 long-term ecological experiments in the ECT's register, and 37 of those are currently active. Now, the thing about long-term experiments is that it not only enables us to look backwards, a time machine, if you like, that runs backwards, but also it gives us the ability to look forwards.
This is the BIFoR-FACE facility. It's situated in the centre of England in Staffordshire. It's a long-term experiment, which is basically a great big piece of plumbing, which you can see all around us, to very gently bathe patches of old, long-standing forest in the atmosphere of the 2050s to the 2060s. What I mean by that is that we're adding extra carbon dioxide. And so the question we have for the forest, if you like, is what's your response as a forest to that change in your primary feedstock? Because CO2 is essentially the primary feedstock for plants through photosynthesis.
Today we're at the Buxton climate change experiment. We're using this experiment like a time machine to look into the future, to try and predict climate change. We're using these experimental treatments here to do that. So summer drought, winter warming, supplemented rainfall also in summer, and then different combinations. So we're trying to predict what the weather might be like in future, what the climate might be like in future. There have been quite a lot of papers coming out of Buxton. The longer this runs, the more valuable it gets, the more questions we can answer.
We are at Wicken Fen National Nature Reserve in Cambridgeshire, managed and owned by a national trust. And we're here at the site of a long-term experiment, which you can see behind me. So this is one of an increasing number of landscape scale nature restoration projects that we have in the UK. This experiment is really about trying to understand what effect free roaming animals can have, where they're able to choose where they want to graze, and what effect that has. By understanding the impact that grazing on the land at Wicken, we'll understand more about how we can use grazing as a tool to manage for biodiversity.
The Ecological Continuity Trust and the experiments it supports give us an important perspective, a vital perspective on the relationship between climate and biodiversity. There is no other way of teasing apart the causes in the environment than using experiments. So with your support, we can continue this important mission into the future.